Hi, everybody, and welcome to Metaphysical Insights. I'm William Becker, your host, and my very special guest today is Mr. Barry Fitzgerald, coming to us live from Ireland. Barry, welcome, and thank you so much for being here. I always love it when you're on my show. We get a chance to visit. Um, so,
Well, thank you very much, William. It's always a pleasure to be able to catch up with you.
yes, thank you. I'm going to just jump right in. You're a busy guy. Um, putting it mildly, where would you like to start on some of the things that you're exploring? I mean, you've got all these projects that you're doing. There's the magazine, there, the the awakening events. I mean, so many different things, but you're also learning a lot from the work you're doing.
Yeah.
And
Um,
I don't know how
you
much
know,
of that you can talk about.
well, we just passed through Halloween there,
Uh-huh.
and it was really it was a rush to get things done because we also wanted to get boots on the ground to witness and film the Halloween event as well in Ireland. A lot of people don't realize that Halloween was created in Ireland. It originated here first.
That's right.
Um,
And we don't
so
think of it.
yeah, and we have this area in Athboy in County Meath, and it's called the Hill of Ward, and and that is where the first tradition of calling in the ancestors occurred. And it is a magnificent experience. It is like nothing that you would see on TV. It is exceptionally druidic, esoteric in its nature, and it really is something that trick or treating is it'd be so alien to us to have the trick or treating during the original Halloween festivities. And here in Ireland, it's known as Samhain,
Hmm.
and that of course is denotes the month of November. And this celebration then would roll in, and there'd be a huge fire would be built. Originally it would have been a huge fire would have been built on the hill of Ward, and you had festivities, you had feasting, there was celebrations, but all the fires in Ireland had to go out.
Oh, really?
Every single one had to go out, and the fire then was lit on the top of the hill of Ward, this massive fire, which is believed as well also was built on top of the bones of the cattle and the animals that had been consumed over the course of the year. It was a way of sending them up and giving thanks for everything that came, and also wishing and trying to attract good fortune for, because you're heading out of the summer months now and you're
Right.
moving into the old man winter territory.
Right.
And it was a way of trying to I suppose, keep him happy, so that you could make it through. And all the fires that were originated in on the Hill of Ward would have been taken to the different areas around County Meath, and these other fires would have been lit. And from those fires, then people would have been lighting their fires at their homes from these other fires, and that kept the process then running. So you have this ceasing of the fires of the old year, and then you have the promotion of the new fire, which will take us through the winter months until the other side.
Uh, well, that's interesting because the Halloween, I mean, not the Halloween, the Easter tradition within the Catholic Church, and I think Anglican, is you have the Easter candle, and then, oh, a couple of the priest lights a couple candles off of that, and then those people go and share, and everybody's lighting candles off of each other. It's a very similar idea,
Mm.
and
Mhm.
bringing the light. This is the light of God in, but it's a play on the same kind of pagan practices of
Oh, very, very
y-
much so. You know,
yeah.
and fundamentally, Easter is based on old pagan practices,
It's a fertility
which
rate,
have
basically.
amalgamated in. You know, and
Uh-huh.
that's the way Christianity worked when it came to Ireland.
Oh
It
yeah.
came really with literally nothing to the island, but it certainly absorbed a lot of
Hmm.
the traditions and the deities that were already here. And of course, you know that cycled on the new religion, and that's where we've been.
Well, the whole concept, the Celtic Christianity versus the Roman version of Christianity was quite a conflict, and
Yeah,
it's
the Irish don't like being told what to do. So,
no.
and the Celtic Christianity was very, very different because Rome couldn't control it. And yet, through the Dark Ages, it was the Irish scribes that were keeping the documentation going about what was happening at that particular time
You
in
saved
Europe.
literacy.
Hmm. Hmm.
I mean, literally, you saved it. I mean, that's
Yeah,
not a figurative statement.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
Europe had forgotten how to read and write.
Hmm. Hmm.
Yeah,
So, but of course, that couldn't be controlled. So Rome put a stop to that eventually,
yeah,
and took control. That was it.
yeah. And I didn't mean to get off on the other track there, but
Oh no, you're
how
fine.
how much of that? And you talk about this being so Druic, but does it go back? Because the Celts and the Druids are relatively recent to the
Yes,
islands. I mean, they're what, 800-900 BC.
that's right. Yeah, yeah. The Celts started arriving here around 500 BC. But we also have to remember as well that there were civilizations here on Ireland before the Celts,
That's right.
and you know you had this force that rolled in, called the Tuatha, which became known as the Tuatha De Danann. These mythical beings which became godlike and everything else, and
Hmm.
then we had the Milesians move in, the Celts moved in after that. But our DNA, our analysis of the DNA, there's some controversial evidence which is now coming forward, um, because the people who were building our passage chambers, the stone mounds, these mound builders,
Right.
um,
And those
we
are
have
Neolithic, aren't they?
Neolithic, yeah.
Yeah.
And through the DNA, we can see that those particular people were coming from the likes of Iraq and Syria,
Oh,
uh,
really?
and coming across. So the mound builders were moving from there. They were following the sun, moving through the Europe, the Mediterranean, up into the northern Europe, and then coming down into the back of England, Scotland, and then into Ireland. And then they moved.
Ah.
They kept moving. So these mound builders, they kept that movement going and continuing, and with it there were certain customs and beliefs that went with them.
Right.
And one of those was the cult of the dead.
Okay.
And you know, from pre-Babylonian periods, we were seeing evidence of these mounds even being built within the Ubidian culture, which predates Babylon and puts us back into prehistory. So although we know that the Ubidians had streets and houses and everything else, we don't really know much about them outside of
No.
that.
And the Ubidians, because I'm not familiar with that name or I've forgotten it. No, where did, were they before Umar? I mean, Babylon
Oh
was
yes,
pretty
yes,
big.
they were before all of that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because I think, was one of the first Mesopotamian cities. Now we're finding things like Karan Tepe and such in Turkey that predate
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
those, but they're
Yeah.
also not as big of a city. Um, so I'm just trying to get the pieces. It's like we were talking earlier. We keep learning so much
That's right.
about
Yeah. Yeah.
history, and I'm trying to update my knowledge that's already out of date, and I just some of it isn't that old, So
When we fall asleep and we wake up, we find out that our knowledge is out of date. So
yes.
we're continually tapping it up.
Mhm.
Um, But yeah, so this particular culture rolled across Europe and then into to Ireland, of course, and culminated here. But what our DNA history has shown is that the second race that came in had had wiped out the entire male lineage of the Neolithic.
Okay.
So the next generations that are coming in are adapting to a landscape which had already been inhabited.
Right.
Um, and as it went along, as the years went along, the knowledge of what the mounds were used for was getting lost, and there were adaptations to that which filtered through and skip along 500 years, and other people were using the mounds differently from what they were intended, excuse me, to be,
Uh-huh.
um, and 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 that continued on
Right.
right up until present day. But yeah, it's a wonderful history that we have, and the way it melds itself in to our historical perceptions and delivers us right into the heart of Halloween, the Celtic celebration of Halloween or Samhain, and how that is portrayed today.
Hmm.
Um, of course, is it's very different to the way that that's portrayed in America, and no doubt if there was someone who came back from 500 BC and had a look at Halloween today, they go, "What the hell is this? This
Oh,
is not what
yes.
we did." So it's all open to interpretation.
Well, I think even the pagan celebrations of Halloween or Samhain today don't have anything to do with the reality of the original ones.
No,
It
not at
wasn't
all.
written down. We don't know.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
And I see, you raise a point there about Gobekli Tepe and things like that, and I see that there are now moves in which they're putting roads, they're making roads over the top of the ruins, and
Oh
burying the ruins, and they're the hills that are around the centers and things like that are being planted out by trees. It seems that the organization behind this, the World Economic Forum, are saying that they're wanting to create a place for future generations to come and eventually dig up. And I'm thinking to myself, well, what's wrong with this generation? Why can't we know?
Oh, well, I've some of what I have been getting from watching historical documentaries, including Time Team, I confess. And I sometimes I question their outcomes on what seems like little information to me.
Mm,
I don't consider myself a historian, even though I do have a bachelor's in it. I've nowhere near studied and trained enough to be so I know these people know things I don't know.
mhm,
Um, but what they say is we have come so far in what we know in our techniques and what we can figure out from even 30 years ago, let alone 100 years ago. I mean, consider what we do now to Shielman and the founding of Troy. Um, and so the future generations are going to be able to do even that much more. So we don't want to ruin everything because archaeology is invasive. I
mhm,
mean, it's somewhat
mhm,
destructive. So they want to leave some to be dug up by and explored by later people that have new technology, new understanding, and
mhm,
can add more to the story than we can at this point,
mhm,
is
mhm,
what I've heard.
mhm.
It makes sense to me. I don't know if there's
Tree
another
roots, though,
meaning.
I would imagine could be very invasive to.
Yes.
So I wonder if that was a good move in their part. But look, they're obviously minds greater than ours. Have these answers,
Yep.
and I leave
Well,
it
I
to them.
also like to know who's paying for what, and you
Mm.
know, England closed Sheffield's archaeological or archaeology department. One of
Oh,
the
I didn't
best.
know. I haven't heard that.
Yeah, it's one of the best in the world, and couple, I think it's just been fairly recently they're phasing it down. They're
Wow.
the students that were studying, you can get the training to a degree, but in a different department now, or coming up. So
It's amazing though what we have with artificial intelligence these days. You know, I see that they're now starting to incorporate artificial intelligence in reading the tablets from Samaria
right.
much quicker than we could ever do.
Oh
Uh,
yes,
the only problem that I have with artificial intelligence is that that bugger will lie. It will make things up. So
yes.
it has to be checked, double checked, and triple checked to make sure that it's correct. Until we get that whatever's going on within the AI intelligence to stop doing that and
And
just say what's there.
yes, and you've got people that know how to use it to make things up. And frankly, it's been a big problem in our elections.
Oh, I suppose, yeah, I could
Yeah,
definitely see that.
people
Yeah.
like to believe the worst,
Mm.
and the more
Mm.
sensational, the more they want to jump into it, even
You
if it
know,
doesn't make sense.
yeah, I see aspects of AI in its production of story and everything else is very similar. And it was something that in the early days I noticed that it was performing much the same as a Ouija board.
Really?
And I thought to myself, wow, that's an interesting thing to observe. The way that the communication was coming through, and then it will throw you a straight line that will take you off in a different direction,
Okay.
and the direction can be a complete lie. And
Right.
when you pull the AI back in this, unlike the alleged spirits behind the board, the AI will admit that it made a mistake. Where if what is communicating behind the board, if you point out, excuse me, if you do a Columbo on it, one more thing,
Uh huh.
uh, they will clear off. They stop communicating.
Okay.
They do not want to be found out. So it was just an interesting little observation between AI and the early days of the Ouija boards and things.
You've gotten a lot more experience, I think, with the Ouija board than I do. It's I haven't used it really for years. I've been around it very little, and I've seen things that are a little convincing about. Occasionally, it works well, and other times where it's just mostly rubbish. And I've done some remote or participated in some remote
Mm,
viewing
mm,
experiments as the medium remote viewing in, and the fakery, the trickery, which
oh yeah,
was
yeah.
later confirmed by the other person in the room.
Hmm.
Um, and it's I don't know what to make of them yet. But you're talking about something very different with them, and I think it's an earlier version of communicating with some of these beings that you're still working with part of the time.
Yeah, you know, and you know, if we take this into the modern age, we see that there have been some companies, high end companies, have been using the the blunt instrument, which is a Ouija board, to communicate with these beings to try and gain access to alternative energies and technology and everything else. And we have the black and white paper there. You know, I've been looking through some of the documentation, and it was quite startling to see what they were attempting to communicate with. But the problem that I have with this is that if you're trying to communicate with something that's portraying itself to be an alien, a gray alien or
Mhm.
whatever, what the hell are they doing using a Ouija board? It's the most vaguest and worst piece of technology, basic technology to use. Yet these beings are meant to be light years ahead of humanity.
Right.
So why not use one of our cell phones and call us?
Yes.
Why not use that? Why give us a vague message within a Ouija board session, which can be interpreted 100 different ways?
Right.
That's no use to any developing civilization. No use whatsoever.
No, and it's a great way to make something sound like it's other than what it is,
Mm.
that it's actually has nothing to do with anyone other than the person running the Ouija board or our own subconscious, um, trying to spell out our own fear of the boogeyman coming out at night or something like that.
I remember one experiment that we had done here in Ireland, and there were four people around the board. And like you raise a fair point. You just you can't depend on the other people who are using the board
Right.
to know if someone's pushing it. So I was out of the session. I was observing the session. I was keeping notes of what was being asked and the answer that was being given. The majority of it was just gibberish.
Right.
It was a dyslexic ghost, I think I was speaking to. And so this was continuing on until it got to a point where all the sitters came down with headaches and they had to leave.
Huh.
And they went down for some refreshments, and I finished up my notes, and I thought, what if I put my little tiny finger on it, just a little light one, and just say, ask a question. No one else is there, so I know that I can depend on myself.
Right.
The glass did move, and it moved purposely, without effort, to the other point, and I realized there's something more to this than meets the eye.
Mhm.
And but it's just one of those examples that we have been experimenting with and looking at it. But of course, all those years of experimentation has led me into developing awakening events
Right.
with Steve Mira and Carmela Lorenzo, and um, we really wanted to do this because we are seeing, as you can see, there's grey now coming into the beard, and the comb over is gone as well.
Mm-hmm.
So we wanted to be doing something and reaching our youth, because we realize that we're not seeing too many of our youth coming up through the ranks,
Right.
and so we wanted to try and address that. And Awakening Events is a cult. It's an umbrella company based out of England, and what it does, it has the likes of the UITC training course, which is an investigator's companion into ufology. It's exceptionally detailed, very, and there are over 25 modules, I believe, in it now so far, and that takes the student through much of what they need to understand the phenomena of ufology and the new research behind it.
Okay.
So not only do we look at old cases from the 1900s and before, but also right up into the modern age, where we're using our own technology to find these locations, because we needed to stop heading out to these locations and thinking, well, let's try there or let's try over there. Now we're using our technology to pinpoint the locations, so it's no longer a shot in the dark, and the
Okay.
greater the success. But of course, from the success, we also have to consider safety,
Right.
because rarely do we find people talking about the safety.
It's a
And
big one. That's
it,
so
it,
important.
it, it absolutely is. And, there's been research that has been coming out, I've been following out of academia just this month, in fact, in which there were studies that were conducted, which showed side effects that were happening to people using meditation. The simple aspect of meditation. First timers, experienced people, right across the board, over 10% were having experiences which were that extreme, that were haunting people for months, if not for the rest of their lives.
Now, what kind of experiences are they? UFO type experiences, or
This is the thing, you see, William. We're creating new language all the time. We're calling new things, and then there's there's different techniques and different processes that are coming in to try and steer us away from what we had already identified years ago.
Right.
And now it comes under the head of psychosis. And in Europe, we can't get numbers like what has come out of the United States. The stats now are showing that the amount of people that are having first time psychosis has shot up through the roof, and psychiatry, of course, is using drugs to try and compensate with this, try and bring this back down again. But the drugs are not having any effect.
This
Now,
is
the
fascinating.
the symptoms of the psychosis is something that we have already identified, as I said, 100, 200, 300 years ago, because what we would call oppression is what is appearing in the psychosis. So when the people are entering their meditation, they're not being warned. The people should be warned. I'm not saying don't do meditation, because meditation is good.
Oh, I
But
know.
we have to be aware that there is a side of it that potentially may not be for our better interest, and to be warned of that. Because going into it pre-warned, you're going to you're going to be able to adapt to that suddenly without having the sense of someone stroking your hair or whispering in your ear, or worse from that. Um, because that's stuff that we have already identified years ago, and now we've lambasted what we saw. We said that what was seen and identified 200 years ago is nonsense. It's this new one. Well, the treatment for the new one, the new labeling, is not working.
No.
And we have stepped away as a civilization from something which is more important. The aspect of spirit and soul is more important. Now we've moved from that, and now objects
Right.
is more important. It's the accumulation of material wealth, and all of that is now more important. Our appreciation for what's inside has now become to what's outside, and I think that has left us vitally detached from what else goes on around us. And I think that in itself needs to be readdressed.
That makes sense. I think you you're making a lot of sense with this. I hadn't heard of the issues stemming from meditation. I've practiced for 30 years.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes maybe longer. Now I have to admit I'm lazy in my practice these days. Um, it's difficult to sometimes get it in,
Yeah.
but I like to sit for about an hour if I can.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but and with ADHD, it can be quite an interesting trip.
Mm.
Um, but this is this is really interesting, and it makes me wonder if what we're looking at as psychosis is actually just our not recognizing that we are going inside of ourselves and connecting with a larger universal awareness and our own deeper self in awareness.
Or worse still, something outside is connecting with us.
Yes, which may or may not be positive. It depends on what that is.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um,
I think the outcome of that is within the 10%. They're witnessing this. That is not
right.
favorable.
Yeah, that is interesting. We're taught. Oh, and I started out with the Buddhist form, and um, we're shown, at least where I live, we're shown this fairly narrow pathway,
Mm.
and there's nothing but positive out of it.
Love and light. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
and
The universe is a double-edged sword, I'm afraid.
it is.
Um, I'll just let this dog out. Just give me 1 second.
Oh, sure.
I don't mean that. Come on.
Hello, sweetie.
Come on. Here.
Whoops, I spoke to her.
There we go.
Ah, daddy's girl.
Yeah. But yeah, so it's an interesting perspective on things, and as I said, the universe is a double-edged sword. Um, to appreciate light, we have to have shadow. To appreciate shadow, we have to have light. It's about balance.
Yes,
Um,
and we have to explore the shadow within ourselves as well,
oh yeah, yeah, yeah. Uh-huh.
and incorporate that in
Hmm.
with the light in a way that's
Yeah,
healthy, instead
yeah.
of letting the shadow be a
Ruinous.
destructive force in our
Mm-hmm.
life.
Yeah,
Yes,
finding
years of
balance
therapy.
is a key factor. Yeah.
Exactly.
And there's a lot to be said. I know a lot of people would say grounding. Oh, for God's sake, walking on grass for 5 minutes is it's it's silly, but it's actually I have found it to be very very beneficial.
Hmm.
And I've traveled on cruise ships quite a bit, and
Right.
I always love getting back to land and getting my feet onto the grass for 5 minutes.
Uh-huh.
Um, but yeah, so the UATC looks at the training course, and all this can be seen on our website at Awakening Events. But
I've
for the
got
people
all
who
of
are
them listed in the chat, everybody.
great,
So I did a copy and paste from what Barry sent me right before we started. So it's all there. The all the different ones.
and and for the more adventurous, of course, we have Project Doorway, and that is something which even this year, the three directors were out in Spain on an expedition to a location where one of these doorways, these portals, is being used. And the success of what we withdrew from that site cannot be weighed even in the amount of gold. It was
Wow.
exceptionally valuable what we pulled from that location.
Can you share
And
some of that?
I can't share it yet because uh, what we're going to do is present the findings of the expedition to our members of Awakenings,
Okay.
because we have a loyalty to them first before
Yes.
we speak to the general public. So, and anyone can become a member of Awakening Events. There's links there
Is
if
there
they
a cost to
should
that?
wish. It's £7.99, £7.99 for the year, and
Oh,
that gives you access to not only the archives of the Phenomena magazine, which goes back years, but also archives the newspaper archives, which we have on file as well, which goes back to 1945 and covers everything of the weird and wonderful. But you also have access to first knowledge chance, or you have the chance of getting first knowledge, and the sharing of information always goes to members first. But that also includes the possibility of being able to join us on the expedition. We have limited numbers for folks and who would like to go to these particular locations. It's very very, and you have to be physically fit to do this. And but my God, the rewards can be something else. But it is a task and a half. I'm not going to lie. It is something physically, mentally, and spiritually you have to be ready for. This is about
right.
experience, and we go to these locations, and we're on the hunt of finding these doorways. There are particular techniques that we use to find the doorways, which includes our own technology. And it has proved fruitful so far. And I'm leaving next month to go to another location here in Ireland, actually, that is proving to be positive. And
Okay.
I've already seen the video footage coming from it, and I'm just blown away. So I'm looking forward to seeing what comes from that. And if that is the case, that is going to be the safer expedition for the members of Awakenings to join us on. There will only be limited numbers. There will be
Right.
about 8 places open for people, but such a tremendous experience for people to have. An adventure and a half is. So all of that can be seen in Project Doorway. Um, and yeah, and of course, I did mention briefly there the Phenomena magazine, and the Phenomena magazine is released monthly. It's free, so anyone can sign up to it, and it covers all things paranormal, ufology, cryptids, and it's released not only in Western English speaking countries, but it's also released in the Spanish speaking countries down into the Americas as well. So we have a huge reading populace, and it's well worth it. It's free. We wanted to keep the magazine free for folks, and because there's a lot of great information in there, and we have wonderful writers in the background. Um, every month creating articles to go into this, including myself.
Right.
I'll be writing on my Halloween expeditions and antics this year. So that'll be going into it. So everything, as I say, falls under the awakening events umbrella, and people can get more information from there.
And for that price, that's something I can afford to do. I'm surprised I haven't already joined as a member.
Well, we'd love to see you there, William.
Yeah, because um I'll find a debit card when we get off, and I'll sign up.
Okay, grand
I'm
stuff.
serious. So people, listen to him. This is good. Barry, I've known for a long time, quite a while. We're friends that friendship I really value, and I trust the man.
Mhm.
So when he says it's good, I believe it. Um,
Honestly, what we pulled out of Spain this year, I have never seen replicated anywhere else.
oh, I can't wait.
It is phenomenal. And what we're hoping to do is to run an event next year, a speaking event, in which the members can come to the event, and there
Okay.
will be one um, presentation at the very end, which will be called Off the Record.
Okay.
And within that, there will be no videoing, there will be no recording of audio. It will be completely off the record.
Leave your
And it
phones
will be a
outside, folks.
presentation to everyone, because there are things there that we really shouldn't be showing,
Right.
but we want to show, we need to show
Right.
about what came out of that location.
Oh, that's fantastic. Um, I can imagine with this, and I don't, feel free if I'm getting too close to things you can't talk about, just shut me up. But I would imagine you have a lot of human possible blocking of some of this, that you might be getting close to things that certain organizations or people or businesses may not want you exploring. They
No
might not
doubt,
understand why, but
no
there could
doubt.
be. Mhm.
I could well believe that, William. But it was the phenomena that
Right.
handed us our asses. And my God, did we pay for getting too close?
Oh, geez. And I'm sorry about that. And I know it's not the first time you've had rough lessons with these things.
We have, yeah, it's like a schoolyard bully.
Yes.
But we bounce back. Although I
Yes.
must say, the older we're getting, the harder it is to bounce back.
Yes. Right. Oh, well, I got to get some health problems fixed up so I can actually take one of these adventures. Um,
Yeah, yeah.
I would like to be there, and especially I'd like to be there as a medium because it's important to me. The more I can understand the depth of the world around us, and that includes those things that come in are other dimensional, um, then I think the more complete our life experience is, in a good way, in a positive way, for the most
Mhm,
part.
mhm. Yeah,
That
I
doesn't mean
definitely
being
think
stupid.
it's really viable and essential for us to understand who we are. Who am I? Who are
Yes,
you as a person?
yes.
And understand our place within not only the world but the solar system and universe beyond.
Hmm.
Um, and I think to do that we have to appreciate all things that share this planet
Yeah, I
and try and find some middle ground.
yes, I agree. And these are some of the lessons that um we can take from, if you want to call it a metaphysical world in existence, and put into our everyday physical world existence too. Just in how we get along and communicate with each other, and
Mhm.
how we keep from blowing ourselves up or
Well,
poisoning ourselves.
yeah, that's a vital one. And how do we stop certain individuals blowing us up as well?
Yes.
That's a big thing too. Um, but every one of us are going to be different. Every one of us, different parents, different upbringing, social backgrounds, all that. That's all different. We're all individuals. But
Yes.
I think it's vitally important that we all have respect for each other. There may be differences. Yeah, we can work through those. But for the main part, to focus on the move forward rather than skating backward into tribalism. And don't get me wrong, there's certain aspects of tribalism which works,
Yes.
such as kids learning, um, and things like that. I think there was a study there done recently, certainly on this side of the Atlantic anyway, that's seen that kids in school should not be taught together at the same age. Within the tribal unit, the 3-year-old looks after the 7-year-old who looks after the 12-year-old. And the 12-year-old looks after the 7-year-old who looks after the 3-year-old. They've all different things to do, but there are no bullying. The bullying and mindlessness happens whenever you've got kids the same age sitting in class for 5 days a week from 9 to 4.
Okay.
It's just mindless stuff. And it was interesting to see how the studies were looking at this. And I think as well in Norway, Norway has a great thing. And I think there's a few other countries as well that are doing it, in that the kids don't get homeworks
Oh,
because
really?
kids need to come home from school and just be bloody kids
Okay.
instead of constantly working behind computers and books and everything else. Give them a chance to grow up.
Right. Yeah. And we didn't. I'm trying to think. The first 3 or 4 grades, I don't think we did homework at all. There may have been a worksheet or two later grade school that you might have half an hour.
Hmm.
Junior high and high school, that's different. You've got the math assignment and the English assignment and the history assignment and the reading and all of the different things. Um, but there shouldn't be too much of it. Um, yeah, there's a balance in there.
Hmm.
Um, and I don't know much about the education system anymore
Hmm. Hmm.
because my parents are gone. They're retired They were teachers, but they
Right.
retired in the late '80s.
Hmm.
So things changed.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
their friends were retiring around then or a little later too.
Hmm.
So I've got a couple of teacher friends now, but um, I don't have none of them are in lower grades. So I don't know how things are taught and what's being taught anymore.
And what did your parents teach?
My father was a ninth grade social studies teacher, which was basically world geography and history. And
Hmm.
my mother was a grade school librarian where she actually ran and taught library. And she would get, she'd have book fairs with people like Walt Morey and Stephen Kellogg and all these people coming in. I've got
So
quite a few
what
autograph books.
what was it like growing up then with two teachers as parents?
Um, I couldn't get away with anything.
That's what I thought.
In junior high, my teachers were over at our house half the time.
Yeah.
Some of them. Mm, always had a love of history, and my dad helped nourish that. I was reading
Hmm.
some of his Oregon history books, the more exciting ones, when I was in grade school, and
Hmm.
some
Hmm.
of the settlement and such out here, and it was much more fun to read than fiction.
Yeah.
Um, and my mom, and both of them, but my mom especially with reading, and she was also the ones that could help me correct my papers because her degree was, she had a education degree, but it was included English or journalism, and so she was a much better writer than my father
Yeah.
was and speller. And I actually feel very fortunate to have had that background. And then we had educators. And my mom's mother was a school teacher, and my grandmother's father was the schoolmaster in the old country for a while. And in Tsarist Russia, she had the chance if she wanted to go out
Uh,
of the village to high school and college. Um, she
and
did.
I'm intrigued to know, when was your first experience, the psychic experience, that triggered off your mediumship?
That's a good question. And my first ghost was when I was about 8 or 9. And it was broad daylight. It was another little boy ghost, and it was fine.
Hmm.
And I don't know if there was psychic involved with some of the things that I saw before and after that, but about my senior year in high school, first year in college, I had a
Hmm.
few friends that were working with these aspects. So
Hmm.
we started working together and um, giving each other psychic exercises and
Hmm. Hmm.
working on trying to find a way to hone in our skills and to make them work. And then gradually from there. So it probably would have been about then that I actually knew and recognized what I was doing.
Right. Okay. Hmm.
Um, I already grew up in a fairly bizarre town I didn't fit into.
Hmm.
Um, I learned, and in my family, you had to be a little careful about what you said too if you wanted to keep your head on straight.
Hmm.
Um, and so I learned how to shut up pretty early, pretty fast.
And
Um,
were your parents aware of what you were doing?
no, that was later. I think when maybe by the time I was in the 50s,
Right.
um, when I started doing work, doing ghost tours for a friend of mine's company, and then doing more professional mediumship work is when they knew, and they were fine with it then. I mean,
Hmm.
it wasn't. But I grew up. I went to grade school in the '60s. Life was different. The world was a very different place.
Hmm. Hmm.
What was acceptable was different,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
and the mill town that I grew up in is expanded.
Right.
Um, I think I was in fifth grade before there was another kid in my class at grade school who had a parent with a college degree.
All right. Okay.
Yeah. Now their parent, their dads made more money. They worked at the mill, most of them,
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
it was a much better paid job than my dad had.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
But it's a different look and different outlet. But when it's not better than the other, it's just different.
Hmm. Hmm.
And bullies like to pick on different if it's weaker.
And the experiences then prior to seeing the young ghost boy at 8, do you recall anything before that?
I have things that I'm not sure if they were dreams or what they were that go back before I started school, even.
Hmm.
and scary things,
Those
clown
are the
type
ones that I
things.
wanted to focus on. Those early
Okay.
ones.
Okay. Some of them, oh, like it was this killer clown that was going to get in at Grandma's house sometimes when I stayed there and kill everybody. And
So the clown only appeared at your grandmother's house.
I can't remember if he appeared any place else or not. I remember him when I was being there up in the boys' bedroom where my dad had my dad's room growing up, and his two older brothers too before him especially. Um, and you could see the trees. It was just kind of spooky and haunted feeling,
Hmm.
because it was dark and the trees would be blowing, and it was nice. It was beautiful, but there was that element. And looking through the glass in the back door, then from my bed, seeing this creature. And even later, I had some, I had a really high fever when I had the measles. And so I had hallucinations.
Hmm.
And one was a saloon girl who was very friendly, and one was a clown
Hmm.
who was very unfriendly.
Hmm.
He didn't do anything, but I could tell. And I don't know if it was the same clown or not.
Yeah.
And I don't know if I was just, if those were hallucinations, or now that you mention it, or if these were things that I had seen before when I was a little child,
Hmm. Hmm.
younger. Um, and every once in a while, and they were it was like they were white, just pure white outlines or forms.
Hmm.
And then we had a little bit of land, not 6 acres, few trees on the back and stuff, and I'd see things darting out between, but some of that could have been suggestibility. I don't know, but it felt differently back there.
Hmm.
And talking to a friend later who grew up a few houses down from me, um, there's actually the road I grew up on was pretty haunted. They had
Hmm.
a lot of activity in the house he grew up in, and they the trees around his house would blow when there wasn't a breath of wind anywhere.
Hmm.
Um, so there were pieces of that all together. I hadn't
Was
thought about that.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
there's something that I began to see within the research, and it's a phenomenon known as the 20-second rule.
Mhm.
And the reason that I call it the 20-second rule is because when we initially come in contact with the phenomena, the initial contact, the first contact, um, it's the way that our bodies react to the phenomena is the way that we should value it and listen to that instinct. Now, usually this tends to happen whenever we're kids.
Right.
We get our we get our first bite at the apple, as they say, and if our bodies react with the fight or flight, then that is what we should be listening to.
Right.
If the body doesn't react, then everything's going to be okay. But if it does react, then it's telling us get ready. And but when it goes after 20 seconds, the phenomena begins to change the brain pattern of the observer. So it starts to switch off our reactionary standby unit, our self defense, if you like, our gift of discernment is
Okay.
switched off. And that's also a place then that we tend to find that the phenomena can also interject false memory and all the rest of the palaver that tends to come with it, and that can interfere with the way that we interact with phenomena for the rest of our lives.
That's interesting. I hadn't ever known that. Well, this whole thing then this path that I've been on very well probably started when I was
Young.
preschool,
Yeah.
and
As it does for many of us.
yeah, I
Mm-hmm.
would think so. I mean, um, there's a lot I remember when I was 1 and 2, but I don't remember a lot along those lines. Just a
Hmm.
few specific things that
Yeah.
stand
Yeah.
out.
Yeah. Hmm.
I mean, I can remember throwing my glass baby bottle out of my crib because I was bored and wanted to get up. And
Frustration. Yeah.
I wasn't bored and I got up, when I did that.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I got in trouble, but I mean, but so yeah, that's interesting. I'm gonna look at that as in how I do work with things now because
Hmm.
I'm pretty confident of my abilities and
Hmm. Hmm. Hmm.
my understanding and what I can interpret. But as much as I hate to admit it, I am human.
Oh, we all are. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yes,
Most of us are. And yeah, but it's definitely something to think about. But
yeah,
if folks wanted more information from myself or from any of the other directors, they can reach out to us at awakeningevents.co.uk, and we'd be only too happy to write back to them. Our email addresses are there. They can contact us.
great. So everybody see that it's all listed. I will also put those in um, the blurb or when I send the links out for people
Mhm.
to watch after the fact.
That's
Now,
great.
people have commented. I haven't flashed them up because they've been highs and different kinds of things. Eric's
Hmm. Hmm.
um, made a lot of comments, but I don't see any questions. Does anybody have any questions before we leave? I don't see anything popping up. Oh, fantastic. Now, Barry, we're at a point, it's almost an hour, just under, where we can either wrap up or keep going. It's totally up to you.
I have a wife downstairs who hasn't seen me all day, so she's expecting me. She's expecting me down after the hour. So
Okay. Well, please give her my best and my big thank you for
thank
sharing
you very much, William.
you
Thank you
with
very much,
us.
and thank you everyone who was on the call and listening.
Right. And everybody, I'm quite serious. Now, Barry's a prolific author. He's got lots of books out. You can find them on Amazon usually.
Hmm.
You've had other websites where people could get things.
Yeah,
Um,
charmstealer.net, I think is another one. But
yeah.
primarily, um, all of the books are listed on Awakening Events anyway. So
Oh,
if
good.
people want to keep up with me there, they can.
Okay. And I just put charmstealer.net up too. And really, he's some of the books Barry has written has really or have really changed my thinking and perspective. Um, one of the last ones, especially, and oh yeah, the deception of gods and men.
Gods and Men. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
That
And
is
the next one I have coming out, it'll be next year. It's finished, but I'm going to shelve it for a month or so and let it sit and rest. And it's called Born to Serve, and that follows on from the deceptions of gods and men.
okay. And oh, good. Eric has that one. Very good. Um, I promote your books and all of them, but especially that one.
Thank you.
Um, whenever I can. His writing is excellent, and the content, and he does his work and his research, people. So the integrity is there. I mean, and he makes you think, and that's a
So
good
all we
thing.
got to do,
Yes,
just
and it's rare these days, so it's a good thing. Great. Well, people, thank you so much, and I'll see you all next time. I will advertise on my social media when the links are up, and please, please, please share it around everywhere with anybody you think might be interested. Um, Barry, I can't thank you enough. It's always such a great pleasure to have you here, and I look forward to more when the book is out and
thank you, William.
and
Always an
when
honor.
you can talk about Spain a little bit more.
Yeah, yeah, that'll be the
Yeah.
big one.
Great. So, good night, everybody, or good afternoon, wherever you are in the world. Okay, bye bye.